Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming, and a new series on the channel that's going to go through my process when I'm thinking about new league starters. Once I've picked a skill that I think might work to clear, say, the pinnacle bosses, this video series is going to go through what I do from Act 1 onwards to try and figure out how best to level the build, what skills to use, and then how to get the build into sort of yellow, red maps, and then killing the pinnacle bosses. Now, this might not be for everyone, because for me, a league starter doesn't need to get all 4 void stones, because Maven and Uber Elder can be quite difficult fights on certain builds, especially if you're league starting on a budget. And what my league starters, for me, I need to do is kill the 2 pinnacle bosses and basically complete most of my Atlas. Then once I've done that, I'm then happy grinding currency with 2 void stones until I can re-roll into the main build of the league and then take on all the other content. So the series is going to be split into several videos. First video coming up is going to cover Acts 1 to 5 and kind of what my process is. And then there'll be a few more videos following on to that hopefully goes all the way through to killing pinnacle bosses. So without further ado, let's jump into the series. Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming and the beginning of League Start testing for 3.19. Now I've obviously got no idea what's heading our way in terms of nerfs or skills, but one of the League Start ideas I had in mind doesn't use any uniques that are likely to be on the chopping block, same with any support gems or skill gems. The build's either going to be an Incinerate or a Flame Burst Ignite Elementalist. Now, the reason I'm looking at it as an option is that it's got really good single target for minimal investment. You just need to solve the issue of clearing maps because the individual skills in question aren't really suitable for clearing maps at any sort of pace. Especially like Flame Burst is going to get you killed because you have to wait until the circle expands. Incinerate is okay, but again, you got to stand still every time. So there are some ideas I've got in mind for that, but that's going to be kind of later in the series. What I thought would happen is that this will probably be the last series on the channel before we start like the proper league start prep, we get announcements and stuff like that. So what I thought I'd do is run through the process I use step by step when planning and testing a league starter. So there's going to be a few different videos cut up into different parts. So the first video is going to look at the first 3 acts. And it's going to look at what I test and how I decide what the best way to navigate those first few annoying acts are. And then what I do at the end of the 3 acts to see if kind of this is viable and it's acceptable in terms of speed for league start. So in terms of Incinerate, it's not available until level 12. And still then, it's just standard witch leveling, however anyone prefers to do it. It's normally either Mines or Freezing Pulse, and then you add in like a Cold Snap, Holy Flame Totem, Arcane Surge, all these sort of things to boost your damage up. I went with Freezing Pulse because I just hate Mines, even just for a couple of acts. I can't stand it. I'd rather be a couple of minutes slower and use a skill that I don't mind using. Then at level 12, I pick up Incinerate. So in the first Act 1 run, I just went with not upgrading any gear just to see how it would perform in a worst case scenario. So it's a plain, 2 plain ones, put it in a 3-link, no flat damage on any of the gear. The 3-link I went for, which I think is best for this skill, is obviously Incinerate, Combustion, and Infused Channeling. Then I supported it with an unlinked Holy Flame Totem, and then an Arcane Surge on my movement skill. And Merval did not go well on this setup, as shown in the footage, and I was scratching my head trying to understand why, because it's a really powerful skill in terms of the damage it gives. And the single target is really what the selling point is, because there isn't much else going for the gem. And it wasn't until I looked at the skill gem that it doesn't actually have any flat damage on it. It's got amazing percentage scaling, but when I haven't got any flat damage on my gear, what exactly is the skill scaling? I'm a bit confused why it did any damage at all, because I have no flat damage on anything. So yeah, the answer is, what damage does it do? Not a lot. So it took me a while to kill Merval. I died and it felt absolutely horrible. So what I did when I finished Merval and I actually realized that the skill didn't have any flat damage is I went back and I tested again, this time with one crafted fire wand, which was a magic wand, a magic ruby ring, and I got the ring from selling an iron ring and a red skill gem, and then transmuted to magic, and then an alteration. So you trade all those into the vendor and you get a wand with flat damage on. So I just took one of these wands into Merval, and as you can see from the footage, the skill performed way better, and Merval went from a 1 minute 30 plus kill with a death to 37 seconds deathless. I thought, yes, that's pretty decent, not an unreasonable one to have just towards the end of Act 1 if you're picking up and selling everything. It's then that I checked the wand and realized that magic craft is a level 14 requirement, And it's very unlikely I'm going to be level 14 by Mervale. I might just be 14, but I don't want to be porting out just before the fight to go and do my wand craft, when also getting there is going to be a bit of a painful experience with no flat damage wands. So it's back to the drawing board again. So I went back to Act 1 again. This time I bought 2 fire wands, but with just the normal recipe. So it's normal ruby rings, again, that you get from trading in iron rings and red skill gems. You'd obviously need 2 magic wands, which would be 2 transmutes, and then 2 alterations. And that gives you 2 wands with a smaller amount of flat damage on it, but when they're combined, in theory, they should have about the same DPS as having just one level 14 wand. And that is pretty much how it turned out to be. The Mervale kill was pretty much identical in terms of time, felt really comfy. If it wasn't for the fact that she moves around all the time, it would be a really, really quick fight. But because this skill gets damaged, the more you're standing still and the more you're channeling, I felt like Mervale's not ideal for it because she's moving every sort of 7 to 8 seconds. And at this stage of the playthrough, you're not going to have any cast speed. But I was really, really happy with how it performed. So I was comfortable that for someone who's leveling normally and not just rushing through in like 20 minutes, you're easily going to have that currency, or you'll have picked up the rares to be able to sell to get that currency. So that was me happy with that one. So then it was time to move on to Act 2. So what I thought about in Act 2 was clearing is going to feel pretty bad because Incinerate is a standstill and do damage skill. So I needed another skill to go alongside it to clear, because it would just take too long to get through the campaign if we use an Incinerate as our main damage dealer. So whatever skill I use, it needed to have big gem damage, and it might be that it has to be unlinked, or at best maybe on a 2-link. It's probably unrealistic to have 2-3 links at this stage, although as a caster with wands, it's not that hard to do. But I don't want to have to worry about having to get a 3-link to make sure the leveling functions. So what I did, I just went through, did Chamber of Sins as normal, and then when I got back to town, I got Herald of Ash as my reward, and then I saw Wave of Conviction. And that does ridiculous flat damage, and it also does exposure. So it's kind of a twofold thing for me here. Pick up Wave of Conviction because that's actually going to clear fine. I'm not going to kill everything, but I'm going to kill enough to keep up with the level requirements that I'm looking for. Then I had a spare transmute, so I bought Combustion from Act 1 and linked that to Wave of Conviction. So my Act 2 links, once we got from Chamber of Sins, was Incinerate, Combustion, and Infuse Channeling. I then had a Wave of Conviction with a Combustion, Holy Flame Totem with a Combustion, and then a Herald of Ash, and then just a Flame Dash Arcane Surge setup. Now, at the moment, it still takes 2 procs of Flame Dash to get Arcane Surge to trigger, but Flame Dash, the more you level up, the more mana it needs. So once it gets high levels, that's going to proc every time we Flame Dash. And this felt pretty good for clearing. You just run, use a Wave of Conviction. Any white mobs are going to get annihilated by it. You ignore sort of rare mobs. If you come into a big magic pack, you can Wave a Conviction totem and then Incinerate, and they go down super quick. So I went to Mervale. Again, Mervale went down really, really quick. And then as my reward, I decided to pick up Faster Casting, which is kind of the way I'd planned to go anyway, because it's going to help me get to max stacks faster with Incinerate. So I dropped Combustion because I don't need it to get the minus reservation, because I've got it on both my Wave of Conviction and my totem. So all I'm getting is a bit of burning damage. So I may as well take Faster Casting to get up to max Incinerate stacks as quickly as possible. So with Weaver done, it was then time to really just test this build out as it is, dealing with the bandits. Is it something I'm happy with, or do I need to go back and revisit, look at the links, and come up with something that's a bit more damage? And then it's at this stage I'm eyeing the level 20 wand crafts, because they're pretty much going to see me through to Kitava at the end of Act 10. So I'm on the lookout for alterations, because you need 2. Essences, if you can find 2 essences by sort of mid to end of Act 2, which is not unreasonable. Perfect. Alchemies will do as well. So to craft these rings, you need 2 rare ruby rings. You need 2 magic wands and then 2 orbs of alteration. And those 2 wands combined gives a lot of flat fire damage for this stage of the game. And because of the way Incinerate scales, it's going to provide insane damage for at least the first 4 to 5 acts. So in Act 3, I decided I'd actually make the build a Flame Burst build. Since I've leveled Incinerate before, I was essentially in this act just looking for a 4-link. Now I do need to kill Gravicius to actually get Flame Blast and also get Armor Brand for later. I also completed the library, as it gives good gem options if I can't get 4 blue main link. It opens up a couple of green gems. That means we can have a slightly different 4 link if that's what drops. When going to 4 link and a 3 link Wave of Conviction, I actually really struggle with mana, even with a mana flask. So I added clarity to the auras. So the auras at the moment are just clarity and Herald of Ash. Everything felt pretty comfortable in Act 3, except on Dominus, as it's really easy to get stunned and interrupt my casting, which then ruins the DPS. When I get the first lab in Act 4, I'm going to take Shaper of Flames, and then drop Herald of Ash and add Malevolence. Can then also use the regrets we've built up through the campaign, in terms of the free ones, to respec the chance to ignite, and take the mastery for 20% more fire damage over time. And then I'm going to head towards the more fire damage over time nodes on the left-hand side of the tree. At this point, I'm doing my best to cap resistances and try and push towards 1k life for the end of the act. So with the first lab done, single target looked good, and clear with Wave of Conviction is okay, especially now that we ignite with every hit. Even if Wave of Conviction doesn't kill things, they should die from the burn damage. Now there's a few more things I'd like to get done in Act 4 to improve the build further, so it's likely this test is going to run into probably the beginning of Act 5. And that's because I'd like to get to level 38 and get Hex Touch support. I can then link that to Wave of Conviction, and if I can, Combustion. That then sorts out my Exposure and Curse all with one button click. I can then either drop the Flame Totem or run it unlinked just for the Consecrated Ground. I'm then going to look to pick up the second 4 link at some point before Act 5 so I can fit in Armageddon Brand. This is going to be the clearing skill that replaces Wave of Conviction. It's going to be something like Armor Brand, Ellie Prolift, Controlled Destruction and Cast Speed, or Swift Affliction and Deadly Ailments are decent gems that we can get in the library. It just depends what 4 link I have drop. Now I'm not 100% sure on the optimal gems yet, but I don't think it matters too much. It's going to be enough, and I'm not really that bothered if other gems are like 5% more. I just want a good collection of gems that will work so that I don't need to worry about specific 4 links. I will POB it a bit later on offline just to try and see what are the best. So even though the last few gems are available sort of midway through Act 4, most of my playthroughs I struggled to hit level 38 by the end of the act. I'm normally about 36. So testing is going to take me into Act 5. This also gives me more time to find a second 4 link. And I do need to start remember to check vendors every level up. Once I get my first 4 link, I always forget to check vendors again. But you might get, a better item, a better 4 link. It's definitely something I need to start adding in to my league starts. Now, the one thing I've noticed about this skill, I'm not sure if it's my PC or the settings, is that Flame Blast doesn't expand from the middle of the cursor when I play. And it makes it really annoying if you're not right next to the enemy, because I actually have to aim quite a bit below the enemy to hit them. Now, I'm sure it's something I'll get used to. It's just really annoying and not something I've noticed with any other skill. Another slightly annoying thing about this run is that you don't get Hex Touch or Ignite Prolift as the Act 4 reward. So you have to buy them both, and an alchemy each, that's quite expensive at this stage. But normally, whatever the league mechanic is, shits out currency. So hopefully that's the case in 3.19. Now, the one gem I want to take a bit more of a look at is Swift Affliction. Now, I know a lot of people don't necessarily run this in damage over time builds because it sort of lowers the amount of time that your ignite is on the enemy. But I've noticed that Flame Blast has quite a long ignite duration, and I would rather have increased damage and a quicker duration because it only takes, say, a second to get another big Flame Blast on the enemy. So I think that's something that I'll look at. The issue might be with the green gems is decks later on, because you can probably only level them to like 2 or 3 before you need to start picking up decks from the tree. And the other green gem is Deadly Ailments. I think this is an option for the brand, but it's not something I want to put on Flame Blast, as it really lowers your hit damage. And even with going all ignite, Flame Blast still packs a massive punch with hit damage. So I don't really want to go removing that for more dot, because I'm not sure it'll make up for it. Again, it's something I need to have a test of in POB. So in this run, I ended up with 2 green, 2 blue, 4 link boots. So I had Armor Brand, Deadly Ailments, Swift Affliction, and Ignite Prolift. And it worked pretty well. It cleared most packs. Wave of Conviction or Flame Blast took care of rare enemies, and single target on bosses or kind of mini bosses were absolutely fine. I need to have a practice with actually playing with these skills because it's pretty new to me, and I was getting myself into trouble by just running a bit too far ahead and getting stuck in packs. I'm just too used playing like a raider with phasing. So I definitely need to have a practice of the actual play style of the skill. Next on the build in terms of where I'm going, it's probably going tree-wise to get the mana reservation wheel so I can fit in a defensive aura on top. And then we definitely need to start going and getting life as the tree is basically all damage at the moment, but that's how I like to build my characters at league start. I don't think I need much more testing in the campaign because all the gems we've got scale with levels, so there's no reason the single target and the clear won't stay exactly as it is. In fact, it should get better as we get access to better gear. So what I'm going to do is just rush through the campaign, get to maps, and then take a look at what the build looks like when it gets through the campaign with maybe just a 4 link for our main damage skill and a 4 link for our clearing skill. And then I need to do some work in POB to try and work out optimal level in trees and gems and what the build's going to look like at later levels. So the next step after that is then to look at what needs to be done to get pinnacle bosses down. Now, obviously, I'm doing this in my trade account, so I can't access the kind of beginner fights. So I'm going to have to test them against the actual main bosses. And obviously, if it can cope with them, it can easily cope with the starter versions. One thing I need to really look at is whether clear is even going to be possible on a 4 link. So it might be I need 2 6 links because this build is going to use a staff at endgame. I'm not going to go golems on this ascendancy, so I should have spare sockets to be able to have 1 6 link for clear and 1 for single target. I do need to consider cost though, so really I'm going to look at what it's like on 2 5 links because I think it's pretty unreasonable to expect to get 2 decent 6 link really early on unless I get really lucky and get some massive like currency drop that gets me a couple of X or 100 odd chaos. So the POB for the character, where I got it to at level 38 in the description, and it shows what gems and gear I had equipped if anyone was interested. I just want to reiterate, this is more of a personal project for me. I would not mind league starting with something a bit different, and I'm happy if it takes, a bit longer, just as long as it freshens up the game a bit and it's something enjoyable and different. It also helps me learn how to prep builds that maybe I'm not that familiar with for league start. But as I say, this is no means a recommendation to league start with a build, as there's going to be tons of better league starters. As I say, I think the end thing is I'll probably end up league starting with a new skill. Anyway, I just wanted to have something in backup that I haven't done before as an option to do as a league starter if all the new skills either look terrible or, again, we don't get any. The reason I picked this build is I can't imagine anything linked to this build gets nerfed because the support gems are standard gems. It doesn't use any of the kind of really popular uniques. And also the skill is used by maybe like 0.1% of people on PoE Ninja. So that pretty much covers the Mammoth video. So thank you for watching. There's going to be a part 2 coming up in a few days, which will cover off what the build looked like at the end of the campaign and how it performs in low to mid tier maps on a couple of 5 links. So until then, take care and see you all in the next one.